Hello, my friends. My name is Justice Knight, filling in for Lisa Haven today. Just to get this out of the way, if you have not had a chance to subscribe to my YouTube channel, there's two ways I'd like you to go about it. If you could, first, you can look me up at Justice Knight. You'll see it just below here on YouTube, or go to justiceaknight.com. Subscribe there. That way, no matter what platform I'm posting on, you're sure to get these messages. Well, today we had a bombshell get published by Zero Hedge. And at first, it's kind of tough to understand why it's a bombshell, because it was titled the UK, but it expands into the United States. And I'm going to take you down a path that's going to illustrate this disinformation campaign that they're about to outline, and how Q Anonymous, which I'm going to reserve opinion for or against on this broadcast, because I simply want to use him as an example as to how a campaign that's outlined within these documents could be executed on the United States. So hang in there for that, because this is going to be critical as we move forward. But let's go back to the article. Again, published on Zero Hedge. Leaked memo touts UK-funded firm's ability to create untraceable news sites for InfoWar campaign. Not the InfoWar we all know, but a disinformation war, a organized, orchestrated campaign. And remember what I told you, not only in the UK, because I'm going to prove to you via a cluster information site of those that are participating within the United States borders. You're going to be shocked as to who they are. Let's read the opening statement here. The hacking collective known as Anonymous has published more explosive documents detailing a UK-based PSYOP to create a large-scale information secret service like there isn't already, right? But nonetheless, in Europe, and in order to combat Russian propaganda. Now, they frame this in Russian propaganda, but that's not the narrative we're going to follow here. That's a great story, a great cover story for the group that's disseminating this information. But in actuality, even by members of their own country, you're going to see them within their own parliament calling them out for impacting their own elections. But let's continue, which has been blamed for everything from Brexit to Trump winning the 2016 U.S. election to this month's anti-Macron yellow vest protest. So this was all leaked by a group called, a site called Cyber Guerrilla. And I'll show you here of the group they're speaking about. The group, and then let me just frame this over for you real quick. The Integrity Initiative. We are the Integrity Initiative. Information is the basis of democracy. Without information, there can be no informed debate and no informed decision-making, at least as we want it to be informed, at least to the message that we want to give it. And they have hired agents in many countries to make sure that they are framing, structuring, and modeling the message to be exactly what they need it to be. This is the Integrity Initiative of who we're talking about, who all had all their documents released by a group who's just, again, trying to serve their public. So one of the leaked, this is the start of the leaked documents, combating Russian disinformation. Remember, they keep using the Russian narrative, but we're going to blow it up much wider. Launching an online communications campaign to inform, debunk, and combat state-sponsored propaganda. This is our comprehensive action proposal. Strictly confidential. Well, until it got leaked. Disinformation, false and twisted information, which is intended to mislead, was a constant of Soviet propaganda policy during the Cold War. But in recent years, the means in which it can be employed have shifted dramatically, with significant implications for its scale and influence. Well, what they basically want to say is the internet allows for fake news, what they classify as fake news. In other words, they use fake news to be any news that they disagree with. Of course, you know that now. But now watch how horrible their campaign and targeted attack will be. And it's also called alternative facts, to spread like wildfire. How do they spread like wildfire? Through social media. Well, remember, I said this group had been called out before, and here on your screen, you're going to listen. This is Emily Thornburg sitting in Parliament talking about this exact group. They've been called out by their own public already.
Is, I'm afraid, absolutely no doubt that the publicly funded Integrity Initiative has broken that rule on a repeated basis by using its Twitter accounts to disseminate articles attacking the integrity of Conservative and Labour officials, of Conservative peers, and, on a repeated basis, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition.
There you go. Emily Thornburg speaking on behalf of the Labour Party against the exact company that we just talked about, the Integrity Initiative. So their parties are already aware that they're trying to impact elections, but we're going to continue because we're going to go and I'm going to demonstrate. This is the site that actually released the information. This is cyberguerrilla.org. This is the anonymous group that posted all this information on them. And it says, well-coordinated efforts of the anonymous from all over the world have forced the UK politicians to react to unacceptable. And these are about the information campaigns. This is about campaigns in the EU. And here's your first reference, US and Canada and also the UK. So now we know it extends into our borders. So let's go back into those leaked documents. And here's one. Advocacy of published content on online media. An indirect, untraceable, an expansive approach. They want to find a way to spread the disinformation campaign against what they call fake news, but make sure it's untraceable. So remember when I said we can use the example of Q? In our country, you don't see Q. You don't see Q's references. You just know that Q has a lot of information that he's able to pump through 4chan and other social media platforms, have it spread like wildfire, exactly what they said could happen or how it would work, to affect and impact a political message, a political agenda. So now think back to all the information you've seen on Q and understand that that is exactly how they're framing their attack to be. So you have a U.S. example of what this organization is claiming their attack would look like. But we're going to continue because if you're going to impact mainstream media, you'll see here Q. This was just a search from today. A quick search reveals all the articles that Q's involved with, and he's extended beyond just 4chan because who do you see here? The Washington Post, NBC News. These are mainstream media sites that Q has now been able to permeate to expand that message. Now, granted, they frame it in conspiracy theory, which they always do because they don't want any of this information coming out. But let's go to how he would expand his message through social media. We just talked about. To amplify our actions, we will also launch social media campaigns on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. How often have I talked about on my channel the evil of Facebook, Google, Twitter, because they're basically the false prophets of the modern day. They allow for messages, unnamed messages, messages with no face, no person, nobody to directly link it to. Well, now these folks here have learned that we can spread our own disinformation and impact everything from elections to civilian agendas. We would search for online influencers and encourage them to become natural allies, to engage in the conversation online by combating false narratives and fostering constructive discourse. So if you don't like what Justice Knight has to say, get on his site and make sure you post bad comments. Make sure you call him a liar. Make sure you say his references are incorrect. Go after Lisa Haven's site. Make sure that you troll her too, because that's what this is called. This is trolling. This is organized trolling. This is their leaked classified document. And then they attack Wikipedia. Wait now, everybody's using Wikipedia for a source of information. So let's go to Wikipedia and let's make the information in our image. Let's make sure that we craft it to what we want it to say. Because we can help, again, spread our own fake news. So if we want a narrative, we can make sure that that politician has something bad put in his history. If nobody catches it, everybody will read it and think they're horrible. Do you realize the horror of what they're doing here? This is despicable. We're going to go into another one very quickly because now we have the Disinformation Campaign. Here, an article that just came out. Fact checkers' choice to be literal or contextual. Because now we know, and you'll read in the site, journalistic fact-checking is typically described as the objective search for indisputable truth. Underpin that definition is the belief that every argument can be definitively labeled true or false, without bias or personal views playing a role in that determination. Snopes, any of the other fact-checkers, Because if we will again remember the narrative, so now we've had Q as an example, now we have Snopes as an example. If we're going to disagree with the news, although it may be true, A, we got to term it fake news. B, we're going to have to put a fact checker up to say it's fake news because everybody will deem that fact checker to be legitimate. Don't worry about it. They won't realize that they have a political bias or a political agenda. This campaign's already being executed. The documents just went to prove it. Documents, we're going to move this over very quickly. At a micro level, this is another portion of the information that was released. We will also conduct targeted operations to publish content in order to counter specific fake news and black PR operations that will be identified. Last month alone, you hear this? We published more than 1,000 articles. This is on an international newsroom. Remember I said the Russian narrative was just a hoax? Because they're telling you here, they've already published 1,000 international articles of their own disinformation campaign. This has nothing to do with combating the Russian narrative. This has everything to do with combating every narrative they disagree with. There's the bombshell portion of this report. It's not the only one. Targets, are you ready? Western countries, primarily the U.S., number 1, UK, number 2, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Wait now, where did Russia happen to go? I thought this was all about Russia. I told you it has nothing to do with Russia. And then they put out the lists of who's involved with this integrity initiative and from which country with their contact information. This was all released just so people realized how real this actually was. Well, guess what? Here's the U.S. and Canadian clusters. This took a little bit of research because they broke all the links on me. Of course they did. Because the minute they find out this information's out there, they want it shut down. Well, they forgot to kill the archives. So here from the archives are just some of those in America and Canada involved. And guess what? Let's just take a few. Let's take Ian Brzezinski, shall we? He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Europe and NATO policy under George W. Bush. So they've gotten into the political system. They've gotten into the military realm because if we take the next person on that list, here you go. U.S. Department of Defense website. This is Dr. Evelyn Farkas, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia. This was under the Obama administration, if I'm correct, is where she served. A direct link now to the Russian false narrative being permeated into the U.S. Let me slide this over just so you can see this real quick. The U.S. Department of Defense website. So now before we look at our next narrative, before we look at our next article, before you read that next mainstream media site, understand that there is a disinformation campaign, a psyop against anything that's legitimate, anything that they disagree with on a state-sponsored platform that was just released on information they never meant to get out. And remember that Q example of somebody who you can't see, somebody that doesn't have a face, that puts out messages through social media platforms. That's not one person, potentially. That could be many people feeding what could be a machine of disinformation. And I'm not saying that that's Q. I'm using that as an example as to how they would put this information out through something very similar that can sway an entire population's opinion for or against what they determine. The PSYOP is in full effect, and all this documentation goes to prove what it is, when it is, where it is, and who it is. And I want to thank you each again for tuning in. Lisa was so sorry she couldn't make it here today, but I want to thank you for allowing me to fill in for her again. You can find me at justiceknight.com. And until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Signing out.